What occurs when the celestial being designed to implement God's flawless righteousness starts experiencing the burden of each existence he ends? In the time before transgression invaded reality, before insurrection disturbed the celestial realm, there existed an angel whose title translated to God's poison, not due to inherent wickedness, but because he embodied the aspect of the divine that inspires the greatest dread, the dimension that disciplines, eliminates, and concludes all things. If you're eager to explore further into Scripture's concealed narratives and uncover revelations that question your established beliefs, press that like icon and join Bible Root Stories' growing family. You're becoming part of a fellowship unafraid to pose challenging spiritual inquiries. His designation was Samuel. When the Creator voiced creation's initial declarations into being, Samuel perceived them with absolute clarity. His magnificent wings extended fully, his essence striking like electrical discharge throughout the celestial domain. He wasn't Gabriel, the compassionate herald delivering favorable tidings. He wasn't Raphael, the caring physician ministering to injuries. Samuel embodied the blade that never erred, God's ordinances given physical shape and vitality. The Almighty cherished him for this purpose. Samuel accomplished what no fellow angel managed. He complied immediately, beyond dispute. While Michael hesitated to contemplate, Samuel had already acted. While Gabriel pursued profound significance, Samuel merely declared, "This represents the Creator's desire." He implemented heavenly righteousness, transforming paradise's immaculate intention into tangible reality. Within a dimension saturated with boundless radiance and perpetual worship melodies, Samuel's quietness transformed into his unique expression of devotion. But within that quietness, something developed, something none of his fellow angels witnessed, not even Michael. With each directive he executed, with each verdict he rendered, Samuel experienced something angels weren't engineered to experience: the gravity of what he obliterated. He observed complete assemblies of spirits grow silent after deviating from established boundaries. He witnessed the protests of inferior entities diminish beneath his weapon. Though God's intentions stayed immaculate, Samuel started questioning something perilous. Can perfection simultaneously inflict suffering? He never articulated these thoughts audibly, but that minuscule fracture, that modest uncertainty, generated the initial tremor destined to eventually disrupt all of paradise. The Creator appointed Samuel as heaven's accuser, the entity examining both angelic and mortal hearts. He moved throughout the celestial hierarchy like reflective glass, exposing every concealed imperfection. While companions sang declarations of praise, Samuel observed intently. While fellow beings worshipped, Samuel monitored carefully. He began detecting something that disturbed him profoundly. "Even illumination generates obscurity," he murmured privately on one occasion. "Even untainted elements can conceal improper intentions." His assessment contained both accuracy and error. For the longer he scrutinized everyone else's darkness, the more frequently he encountered his own reflection staring backwards. An occasion arrived when Samuel positioned himself immediately facing God's seat of authority, not beneath, not adjacent, but confronting it directly. Exceedingly few angels approached that proximity. He functioned as Paradise's decree executor. When the Almighty pronounced judgment, Samuel's wings transported that ruling throughout existence. He eliminated corrupted celestial bodies. He quieted defiant seraphim. He terminated whatever opposed holiness, beyond inquiry, beyond postponement. He personified power. He personified structure. He personified terror. He proved essential. Yet here lies the dilemma with essentiality. It generates feelings of irreplaceability. When you sense irreplaceability, you gradually begin sensing equality with your Creator. That's where his catastrophe genuinely commenced. One moment, though temporal measurement in paradise remains unclear, perhaps merely a single inhalation, Samuel observed God forming something novel, something delicate, something mortal. For the initial instance, Samuel's expression wavered. He examined these beings fashioned from earth particles and addressed Michael. We sacrifice due to our dedication. We burn with sacred flames, yet he bestows his personal likeness upon these creatures. Michael responded with a gentle smile. That represents love's appearance, sibling. But Samuel couldn't formulate a response. Love. That term held zero meaning within his framework. Justice? Certainly. Obedience? Unquestionably. But love? Love pardoned what warranted discipline. Love transformed judgment into compassion. Samuel couldn't understand compassion. So when the moment materialized to evaluate humanity, when Paradise's tribunal required someone to prosecute, God directed his attention towards Samuel. In that instant, he expressed satisfaction, for this assignment aligned precisely with his design. He assumed the prosecutor's position in heaven's courtroom, the voice interrogating human spirits before the divine, the voice announcing, should they transgress, they must perish. Should they rebel, they must descend. He excelled at this assignment, detached, precise, faithful. He believed he served devotedly. But transformation was occurring. Each condemnation he issued, each judgment he voiced, an internal voice commenced whispering, "You derive pleasure from this activity." Was it arrogance? Was it deterioration? Or merely the resonance of the precise function God assigned him, divine fury rendered conscious and animate? That's where the authentic story commences, not with insurrection, not with envy, but with an angel who embraced righteousness so fervently that he neglected mercy's sensation. Perhaps that's what damaged him. Perhaps that prompted God to eventually murmur, "Samuel, stop." But how do you instruct an angel whose whole existence centers on judgment to abandon judging? He embodied the tempest God generated. Yet even once initiated, tempests cease heeding their originator. Now I must pose this inquiry. If God fashioned Samuel with foreknowledge of his destiny, did God manufacture his adversary? Or was Samuel merely the divine aspect we were never intended to see? Paradise possesses no nighttime, but a quietness resembling darkness pervaded whenever Samuel entered the tribunal. Fellow archangels claimed that quietness represented reverence, but deep within, everyone recognized the reality. It represented fear. Samuel voiced heaven's courtroom proceedings. When a soul faced evaluation, his tone reverberated through eternity. When angels deviated, his authority executed the ruling. He never shouted, he never displayed anger. He simply articulated words, and all creation yielded to his declaration. The angels designated him God's prosecutor. The Almighty himself proclaimed, "Let every pronouncement of righteousness flow through Samuel." At first, Samuel functioned without a solitary error. He considered judgment a manifestation of love, that correcting and disciplining generated purity. But progressively, the righteousness flame within him began distorting. Each proceeding deposited residual fragments, anger particles, bitterness, sorrow. He perceived betrayal universally. He detected hypocrisy even among the sanctified. He recognized how angels experienced jealousy toward one another, how even brilliance could project dark silhouettes. He began wondering whether the process Creator selected truly functioned efficiently. He began recognizing that while he implemented God's directives, others sang. They offered praise. They recuperated. He remained perpetually laboring, perpetually destroying, perpetually concluding. One moment, Samuel whispered, not vocally, not through overt rebellion, but within his personal consciousness, "If none possess my capability to execute righteousness, doesn't that establish me as the most authentic servant?" It remained a modest thought, a hazardous one, yet thoughts resemble seeds. In paradise, even one seed can fracture eternity completely. When humanity's initial transgression occurred, heaven's tribunal assembled. The atmosphere trembled with holy luminosity. The throne radiated brilliance no mortal vision could endure. Standing before it, wings spread, eyes blazing with authority, Samuel waited. He already possessed knowledge of the verdict. The soul committing sin must expire. He rehearsed it repeatedly internally, prepared to deliver it with immaculate cold compliance. Then God paused. It marked the initial occasion Samuel witnessed the Creator hesitating. He glanced upward and perceived compassion in God's gaze. "They shall continue existing," God announced. "My design transcends their descent." Samuel froze. His wings stiffened. His flame wavered. "Continue existing," he whispered, "following betrayal?" The angels murmured responses. Michael lowered his face. Gabriel released a relieved exhalation. But Samuel clenched his hands until sparks descended from them like heated embers. He advanced forward. "My lord, your declaration constitutes law. If law remains unenforced, does it preserve sanctity?" He wasn't defying God, not yet. He sought comprehension, he desired understanding, but the inquiry itself fractured something sacred. God observed him, and within that examination existed love, the variety that sears more intensely than flames. "You were constructed for judgment," God stated gently, "but you don't yet comprehend mercy." Mercy. That term again. The term possessing no position in Samuel's vocabulary, the term that demolished his certainty. He bowed his face, yet as he rotated away, an inconceivable emotion saturated his chest. Jealousy. Why should these fragile beings, constructed from particles, obtain what he, the eternal executor, never could? Forgiveness, compassion, another opportunity. That moment, Samuel traversed heaven's passages in quietness. The illumination diminished surrounding him. The choruses grew hushed. Michael pursued him once, inquiring gently, "Sibling, what disturbs you?" Samuel's answer was composed, excessively composed. "I am disturbed by compassion, Michael. It pardons what must be eliminated." Michael regarded him with sorrow. "Compassion doesn't eliminate righteousness, it redeems it." But Samuel merely smiled faintly. "Then redemption represents a technicality, not legislation." He departed. Weeks transpired. The tribunal continued, but Samuel's dedication began shifting. Not externally, but internally. He still implemented God's directives, he still disciplined rebellion, but he began deriving satisfaction from the terror sound in those he judged. He began believing his righteousness exceeded God's compassion. He began perceiving himself not as a servant, but as the equilibrium, the entity capable of correcting what even the Creator, in his mercy, had permitted to deteriorate. There exists a juncture in every angel's chronicle where compliance transforms into identity. Identity transforms into arrogance. Arrogance was the whisper that previously dismantled paradise. But Samuel didn't rebel yet, not overtly. He simply intensified his grasp on righteousness until even compassion began resembling corruption in his perspective. One evening, or what paradise designates the tranquil period when creation slumbers, Samuel positioned himself at creation's boundary. Beneath him, the mortal realm shimmered. He observed humans expressing joy, transgressing, loving, repenting. He whispered, "They violate every ordinance, yet you regard them favorably. I obliterate for you, yet you avert your gaze." Then he elevated his face toward the throne overhead and stated, "Tell me, my lord, do you still govern the flame you positioned within me?" No response materialized, only quietness. But quietness can prove hazardous, for quietness resembles authorization. From that evening onward, Samuel began supervising the destroying angels differently. He issued instructions before paradise articulated. He disciplined before judgment received confirmation. When Michael confronted him, Samuel simply declared, "I function as I was fashioned to. I execute." But his eyes were transforming. The illumination within them flickered not from sacred fire, but from something alternative, something mortal. Fury. Tell me, what would your response be if the objective you were designed for, righteousness, started resembling the precise reason for your displacement? Would you cease serving, or would you proceed further until even God himself needed to halt you? Because that's what transpired subsequently. The angel of judgment crossed a boundary so profound it made paradise tremble. There exists a moment preceding every tempest when the atmosphere grows motionless. That stillness, that tranquil tension before everything ruptures, that's what paradise resembled the moment Samuel transformed. He still positioned himself among the archangels, his radiance still illuminated, but something behind his vision differed. It was no longer tranquility, it was pressure restrained in quietness. Paradise had confronted insurrection previously, but this wasn't that. This proved quieter, colder, and considerably more hazardous. Because Samuel didn't express fury against God, he simply began acting beyond waiting his declaration. The first death. The story tells there existed a period when humanity's initial soul expired. No angel comprehended death's nature, not even Samuel, until God whispered, "Now it commences." When he said that, Samuel advanced forward. Not Michael, not Gabriel, Samuel. He posed no inquiries. He spread his wings, dark flames spiraling through the feathers, and descended toward the realm. The planet remained recently formed. The atmosphere was dense with creation's warmth. There before him rested the delicate body of a male, motionless, quiet, breathless. Fellow angels watched from overhead, unsure of appropriate action, but Samuel moved with exactness. He contacted the male's face. His hand illumined white, then golden, then reddish. And in that instant, the soul ascended from the body like vapor, trembling, bewildered, terrified. The first death had materialized, and Samuel had transformed into its courier. He transported that soul to Paradise's entrance. When he positioned it before the throne, he awaited God's voice. But God articulated nothing. Only quietness saturated the tribunal, a holy, terrifying quietness. Finally, Samuel whispered, "It is accomplished. Judgment implemented." Still nothing. So he looked upward and said, carefully, yet with something sharp in his expression, "Is this not my objective?" Then materialized the reply, not in thunder, not in fury, but in tranquil sorrow. "Affirmative, Samuel, but death isn't destruction. Death is transition. You've transformed the entrance into a burial place." The courtroom trembled. Samuel's radiance diminished. He desired to dispute, but how do you dispute with God? So he bowed. Yet internally a singular thought began burning. "Then you fashioned me incorrectly." He didn't vocalize it outwardly, but Paradise perceived it, because thoughts resembling that reverberated more deeply than words ever could. After that moment, the designation Samuel acquired new significance. The angels began designating him the angel of death. It was intended as recognition, yet it resembled exile.
While others sang and generated, Samuel alone descended to locations where existence concluded. He transformed into a silhouette passing through battlegrounds, wastelands, municipalities. Everywhere vitality faded, his presence pursued, solemn, quiet, frigid. He never disobeyed, he never deceived, he never declined his obligation, but he commenced transforming in how he experienced it. Because he witnessed excessive amounts. He witnessed every tear, every cry, every hand extending for compassion that never materialized. He witnessed children expire, monarchs descend, lovers separated. The more he witnessed, the more he realized something that terrified him. If this constitutes righteousness, why does it resemble cruelty? One evening, if paradise possesses evenings, Samuel positioned himself alone by creation's borders. The firmament's illumination radiated beneath him. He whispered into the emptiness, "Inform me, Lord, am I still your servant, or have I transformed into your discipline?" The celestial bodies didn't respond. They merely reflected his flame, a flame that no longer appeared sacred. For the initial occasion since existence's dawn, Samuel wept. His tears descended through the atmospheres like meteors, blazing sorrow trails that angels mistook for descending stars. Michael discovered him there, kneeling in the residue of realms he had cleansed. "Sibling," Michael stated gently, "why are you positioned here alone?" Samuel didn't glance upward. "Because I contact what no one else dares contact, because I witness what no one else should witness." "Then cease observing," Michael whispered. "I cannot," he stated. "It's everything I was constructed for." He rotated his eyes toward the mortal domain below. A plague swept throughout the planet, a death wave, invisible, unstoppable. The protests ascended into paradise like vapor. Michael glanced downward and inquired, "Will you descend again?" Samuel didn't respond. He simply spread his wings and descended. But this occasion, something differed. He didn't await God's directive. He didn't request authorization. He simply functioned. When he concluded, 1,000 souls ascended. Not one, thousands. The atmosphere itself darkened from their protests. That was the moment the angels commenced whispering. Samuel moves before the declaration. He no longer heeds, he determines. Though no lightning struck him downward, paradise itself commenced grieving, because an angel who functions beyond command transforms into something more hazardous than a rebel. He transforms into a deity in his personal consciousness. When Samuel returned to the tribunal, the throne was tranquil. The atmosphere was denser than typical, the variety of quietness that resembles disappointment. God stated, "You proceeded before my voice again." Samuel bowed. The ruling was evident. "I merely accelerated the inevitable." "You don't accelerate what I haven't articulated," the Lord replied. "Then articulate faster," Samuel stated gently, almost trembling. Heaven gasped. Every seraph ceased singing. Even Michael flinched, because that wasn't compliance anymore. That was arrogance wrapped in suffering. God arose, and when he articulated, every celestial body flickered. "Samuel, you were my hand of righteousness, but now you've transformed into the hand of your personal intention." Samuel elevated his face. His eyes burned with something halfway between devotion and defiance. "Then who am I, if not your righteousness?" For the initial occasion, God observed him not as a servant, but as a catastrophe. "You are what transpires when judgment neglects love." From that moment, Samuel was no longer permitted to position himself before the throne. He wasn't expelled, not yet, but he was designated apart. He traversed paradise's boundaries, half in illumination, half in silhouette. In the dark locations between the celestial bodies, a whisper commenced pursuing him, a voice not from paradise, but from somewhere more profound. It stated, "You were correct to question. Compassion is weakness, righteousness is strength."
Samuel recognized the voice. He didn't want to respond, yet he did. "Who are you?" The reply materialized like a hiss, gentle and ancient. "The one who once posed the identical question." That's how Samuel met Lucifer, not as adversary, not as confederate, but as two aspects of the identical wound. If Lucifer descended because of arrogance, Samuel would descend because of objective. That renders his narrative considerably more catastrophic. Because he didn't descend to oppose God, he descended attempting to understand him. Now, permit me to pose this inquiry. If you were fashioned to implement God's fury, but your consciousness commenced experiencing compassion, would you be sanctified for resisting it or condemned for caring? Because that question, that solitary, unbearable question, is what will obliterate Samuel subsequently.
There existed one moment, one solitary instant in eternity when Samuel's consciousness fractured beyond restoration. It commenced with a whisper, a heavenly decree, a directive like numerous preceding it. But this occasion, it wasn't a nation, it wasn't a king, it was a child. A youth no older than 10 cycles, born beneath a cursed lineage, doomed by his father's transgressions. Paradise's judgment had articulated, the lineage must conclude. Samuel was sent. He descended from the celestial realm in silency. His wings, once silver, now darkened at the borders by centuries of obligation, folded around him like a tempest. He found the youth sleeping beside his mother. Their modest dwelling flickered with a dying candle's illumination. The child's breathing was steady, innocent, tranquil. Samuel positioned himself there, grasping the decree in his hand, a flame seal that only he could decipher. The directive was absolute. Yet as he elevated his hand to accomplish it, something within him demolished. He perceived not a transgressor, not a threat, but vitality that had merely begun. A child who didn't yet comprehend hatred or disobedience. The mother stirred, opening her eyes. For an instant, she saw him, the angel of death. She didn't cry out. She whispered, trembling, "Please, not my offspring." Those words, simple, mortal, desperate, pierced Samuel more profoundly than any weapon. He froze. His hand trembled. His wings unfurled in agony. For the initial occasion in all creation, Samuel, the angel of immaculate compliance, disobeyed. He tore the decree in half. The celestial realm roared. The celestial bodies diminished. The throne's illumination flickered. A voice thundered throughout the universe. Samuel. In that voice existed grief, disappointment, and unyielding authority. Samuel descended to his knees, wings trembling, eyes saturated with tears that burned like molten silver. "My lord," he protested, "have compassion. The youth has accomplished nothing." But the voice responded, "Righteousness is not yours to question." Lightning divided the atmosphere. The youth's vitality was extracted, not by Samuel's hand, but by heavenly directive itself. In that instant, Samuel screamed, not in insurrection, but in heartbreak. Because he finally realized compassion possessed no location in his existence. He observed the celestial realm and whispered, "Then why did you grant me a consciousness?" From that moment, Samuel transformed. He still implemented judgment, yet the illumination in his eyes had vanished. He no longer regarded mortals as souls to guide or condemn. He perceived them as delicate, catastrophic beings, creatures doomed by the identical God who manufactured them. Deep within him, something darker commenced forming. It wasn't hatred, not yet. It was suffering. Suffering that distorted and intensified until it transformed into something unrecognizable. Suffering possesses a method of attracting darkness. That was when he materialized. Lucifer, the morning celestial body, the once brilliant prince who had descended not long previously. He discovered Samuel in the quietness between paradise and planet, wings folded, face directed downward in despair. Lucifer stated gently, "You perceive it now, don't you? The imperfection in his perfection." Samuel didn't respond. Lucifer advanced closer. "You implement his fury, yet he conceals his hands. You eliminate in his designation, yet they designate you evil. Doesn't that ache within you?" Samuel's jaw intensified. "Do not tempt me, morning celestial body. I am not resembling you." Lucifer smiled, faint and knowing. "No, you're not. You still believe he loves you. But inform me, if he genuinely loved you, why would he manufacture you the face of death?" That inquiry lodged itself profoundly in Samuel's consciousness. He didn't respond. Lucifer didn't press further. He simply rotated to depart and whispered, "One moment, sibling. You'll comprehend." Samuel did comprehend, because over the centuries, as humanity continued transgressing and suffering, he observed them praying to God for compassion and obtaining none. He observed them expiring under decrees he possessed no alternative but to deliver. The more he complied, the more he resembled a weapon, not an angel. Therefore, he commenced posing the question that would designate the commencement of his descent. If righteousness obliterates the innocent, is it still heavenly? He commenced wandering beyond his instructions, questioning judgments, hesitating to strike, intervening in methods paradise never authorized. Soon, whispers commenced spreading among the angels. Some designated him compassionate, others designated him hazardous. Paradise watched, hell waited, and Samuel positioned himself between both, torn, fractured, no longer certain which aspect genuinely served righteousness. Can you imagine implementing righteousness so extensively that you neglect love's sensation? Can you imagine being detested by the realm and feared by paradise for accomplishing what you were fashioned to accomplish? Samuel didn't descend in flames like Lucifer. He descended in quietness, through heartbreak, not arrogance. But heartbreak can transform even the purest illumination into silhouette. Samuel's descent wasn't born of arrogance. It was born of heartbreak. He wasn't attempting to seize God's throne. He was attempting to comprehend God's consciousness. Perhaps that's why his narrative penetrates more profoundly than Lucifer's, because Lucifer descended by extending excessively high, but Samuel descended by experiencing excessively much. He transformed into the outcast angel, the one who still serves righteousness, but with tears in his vision. The one who delivers death, but whispers prayers for the souls he extracts. The one both paradise and hell fear, because neither fully possesses him. They designate him the angel of death, but perhaps he's something greater. The evidence that even in judgment, compassion can still burn like a dying celestial body that refuses to extinguish. So, I'll pose this. If you were Samuel, torn between compliance and compassion, would you still pursue instructions? Would you still designate it love if love was the reason you were expelled? Samuel's narrative reminds us that sometimes faith's most challenging path isn't choosing between good and evil. It's learning to grasp righteousness and compassion together in the identical hand, precisely as God accomplishes. The tension Samuel experienced is one we all encounter when existence doesn't generate sense, when God's methods challenge our comprehension. But unlike Samuel, we have the gift of seeing God's love's complete picture through Christ, where righteousness and compassion converge at the cross. If this exploration through Scripture's hidden narratives moved you, press that like icon and join Bible Root Stories. We're investigating God's Word's depths together, uncovering revelations that strengthen your faith and deepen your relationship with Him.